December 8th meeting of the Historic Resources Board. Would staff please call roll?
Yes, Chair Bernstein.
Here.
And Vice Chair Wimmer. Here. Board Member Bauer.
Here. Board
Member Bunnenberg.
Here.
Board Member DeSico. Here. And we have two absences, Michael McKinnon and Roger Kohler.
Thank you, and welcome Councilmember Holman to the meeting. Good. And welcome to the members of the audience and the public. All right, we'll start with oral communications. If there are any members of the public like to speak on any item not on our agenda, please make yourself known. Seeing none, moving to if there are any agenda changes, additions, or deletions.
None.
Thank you. Next, city official reports. I see none are listed, unless there's any comment you'd like to make.
Just a quick comment.
Sure.
As you may be aware, the Avenidas appeal goes to council on Monday. We have hope because there has been a mediation with the appellant, La Comida, and it's anticipated that appeal will be withdrawn. But nevertheless, we've advertised it for a public hearing in the event that council does decide to pull it off the agenda.
Great. So, Thank you. Anything else? Good.
Nothing else.
Thank you. Okay, next is public hearings, continued business, and that says none. And then next on our agenda says a study session, and I'll read the title of that study session. 303 Parkside Drive, Green Meadow Community Center, study session to conduct a preliminary historic review for an application for a conditional use permit and minor architectural review to allow an 1,800 square foot accessory structure near the park and update to the existing pool and deck area within the gated area of the community center that is included in the Green Meadow National Register Historic record. For additional information, contact Amy French. Shall staff have a report for us, please?
Thank you. I'll just start by saying in the report, there's an error. I said it was received on, the application was received on December 7th. Obviously, it wasn't just yesterday. Wrote the report last week, so it came in on November 7th. That was the first error. Another thing is we did get revised plans last Thursday, and so you were able to get the plans, but my report reflected an earlier set. So it does mention that there aren't any, finish and color schedules, which is now no longer true because the plan set does show those. And then finally, Page and Turnbull, John Rush did provide a report, which I emailed to all. Hope you got that last Friday, and the applicant got that this week. And Mr. Rush is anticipated to be here, but given that my train was late from Redwood City, who knows from Oakland how that's going to go. But I have summarized his comments in my PowerPoint. Oh, I was just saying, well, welcome, John Rush. I got some of your items in my PowerPoint, Great. Just in case.
Do you have a preference for where I sit?
You can come up here.
Right. Thank you.
Be comfortable. And I should note that Page and Turnbull was awarded a contract for the Eichler Design Guidelines, which is a citywide effort for the Eichler-built neighborhoods designed by multiple architects. This particular neighborhood, the Green Meadow neighborhood, is a national and California Register listed resource, historic resource. On the screen, we have the 1954 plan for the community center. Some fun little notes there. You can't see all of them, but privacy for the gregarious, I think it says. And you can see the original park pool, which has been modified. But the community center to the right, here where there's a child care center, there's this breezeway here that is passable through from, for the bicyclists. I lived in Green Meadow and rode my bike to Wilbur, it was known then. This is quite a well-traveled path to get to the schools, and there's a pool service building with the lockers and showers. The architect can go over why they're choosing to create a new building rather than revise the old bathrooms here that need updating. So it's on the register. It was built in 1954-55, and here is today's swimming pool, much larger than the original. You can see in the background the pool office where people check in, the showers and restrooms over here. This is towards Parkside on this side, and the park is behind us in this photo. Here you can see past the wall. This is kind of a raised, a grassy area, and you can see the park in the background with all its mature trees. And then down here, of course, is the park. Thomas Church, well-known and awarded landscape architect, did design this park, but the National Register form did not identify the park as either contributing or non-contributing. This shows an image of the existing park with the full court, or mini full court, I guess, basketball court. You can see Thomas Church's characteristic kidney-shaped lawn, mature trees, some alcoves around for picnicking. But this form did not indicate what had changed since the 1950s in that park. So it's not really well known about that. And then this shows basically the non-contributing pool. It was determined non-contributing because it had changed since the original. These have not changed since the original, the multipurpose room and the pool services building. We have a proposal for a new concrete block trash enclosure. Here's the parking lot out this way. And then the new building here with the pavers around and half basketball court. This kind of shows a close-up of that. I'll let the architect go into more detail on their proposal. Some of the things. And they have ideas for restoring some original removed features as well as some of the other things shown. Here are the proposed elevation. This one would face the pool. This one would face the park. And then these are the ends where the restrooms are here, and then facing the basketball court and patio area over here. There's a finish and color schedule now on the plans that indicate Eichler colors and the similar materials and form. So the discussion items here today for the HRB would be, we have a cultural landscape, not identified as a contributor, but potentially a district contributor. And I'll let John talk about the study, what kinds of study would be needed to find out more about that. And then we have the issue of the compatibility of the proposed building with the neighborhood and the effects of the project on the landscape there. And then we have the Secretary of Interior standards. We know that number 1 is met because they are continuing the use of community center, but the others are for discussion. So basically, as per John's report, I don't know if you want to talk about these, but there's 2 areas of study that John brought up in his report: architectural compatibility, looking at the proportions and repetition of windows in the neighborhood and in the existing buildings on site. Some considerations there, and cladding, which has the narrow vertical siding. That would be an area that is ideal for differentiation, to look at the proportions of that cladding, just so we make sure that it doesn't look like it was built in 1954. And then there's this effect on the landscape. So, I really appreciate the analysis that John was able to, turn around in short order from the revised plans. It talks about the circulation patterns not being interrupted, which is great in the park, some spatial arrangements, and the boundaries between areas not being interrupted. But it does disrupt some symmetrical arrangement of features. So that's, something for discussion. So in any case, this is a study session, but we do have an application that has come in for conditional use permit and architectural review. So this would be an opportunity to provide some feedback to the applicant and architect, and they're here to present.
Great, thank you. So before we invite the applicant to give a presentation, I'd just like to see if anyone has any disclosures. So I visited the site. I walked, got permission from the pool personnel to walk into the property, walked around the pool, took a look at the buildings inside, and that was my visit to the site last week. Any other board members? Beth?
I have the disclosure to make that I was the chair of the HRB when this National Register nomination came in, and I walked the entire area looking at each address. then I went to the state hearing and testified
Wow.
that I had done this. So my history goes way back, and it was in addition to all the wonderful information that's in it, it is a thing of special pride that Joseph Eichler would sell to anyone. There were certain areas in town that had really quite discriminatory issues in their subdivision. And we were having lots of young, new hires in the tech industry, the HP and so forth, and many of them were able to buy because of Eichler's personal beliefs that he would want to sell to anyone. So
Right.
it's nice to see this.
Great, thank you. Board Member Bauer.
Oh, I did walk around the site and actually talk to one member of the community.
Yeah, I also visited the site last week and walked the park, which I didn't even know was there, and looked at all the buildings, so.
Vice Chair Wimmer.
I didn't enter any of the buildings, but I did walk through the site.
I as well attended the project location yesterday and had a very welcome reception from the receptionist or the person in charge of the pool, and she showed me how to get around without climbing the fence to see the park and such, and was very helpful, and it gave me a much greater understanding of what I'm looking at today.
Thank you. I'd like to invite the applicant for a presentation. If you could identify yourselves, please, and then we'll ask questions after the end of the presentation. Thanks.
So hi, I'm Sherry Listgarten, and I live in Green Meadow. First, I want to thank you guys all for helping with this project. It means a lot to our neighborhood. It's not just historic in name. I think that people grew up in the neighborhood, they live and they breathe it, they're raising their kids there now, and they care a lot about this project. It's been a discussion for about 3 to 5 years. There was a lot of contention about what we do with this, you know, and so Martin, you asked a good question, or Amy asked a question about, you know, why aren't we doing all of this in the existing buildings? And so I can talk about that a little bit. So the purpose of this project, during a lot of discussion about what to do with this area, the most active people are the people who use the pool. There are a lot of families who use the pool, a lot of kids on the swim team, and so they want more lanes, you know, and they want nicer locker rooms and things like that. And a bunch of the neighbors stood up and they said, you know, we don't even use the pool anymore. We don't have young kids. We want to fill in the pool. You know, we want to build community gardens, you know, and so there was a lot of contention, and it was, you know, it's serious stuff. You know, this is local politics. It's, you know, difficult. And I think what we did is we listened to all of the feedback pretty carefully, and we said, you know, we need to engage more of our demographics in this shared facility. You know, it's not okay to throw all of our money into the pool. The pool does need maintenance. You know, every 30 years you've got to do the deck and the plaster, the tile, the coping, the pump room, et cetera. But we really wanted to take, you know, seniors, childless families, you know, younger, you know, teens and stuff who aren't using the pool and find a way to engage them. And so the reason why we're building the clubhouse between the pool and the park is it's dual use. You know, that way people who use the pool can use it, but for people who don't use the pool and they just want to use the park and they want to have a bridge club, or they want to, you know, show, have a musical rehearsal, or they want to show slides from the recent vacation, or everybody wants to get together and watch the Super Bowl or something like that. It's a completely different set of uses, new uses, and it takes much better advantage of the site that we have. We have an amazing site in the middle of our neighborhood, and we want to put it to better use. So that's the goal of this project. I will say that we, you know, we're a very active community. We've been discussing all of this information with the community. We had a vote with preliminary plans. We had kind of a record turnout. So 64 households showed up, households in person, to hear about this. And out of the 200, we thought that was a terrific turnout. The vote was 62-2 in favor of this. It was remarkable. One of the holdouts was something to do with the financial. And then, so it's very, very strong endorsement. So that's some of the background to this project. We are concerned with the historic integrity, so we're really looking forward to your feedback on this. You know, it's difficult to do things like a refuse enclosure and, you know, all of this stuff and keep the redwoods, and you do there's a lot of constraints. And so we feel like we have a good start at it, but we're really interested to hear what you have to say. So that's my part, and Bud is our architect.
Hello, everybody. My name is Bud Kobza. I'm with Dennis Kobza Architects. I happen to be a longtime Palo Alto resident myself, 57 years, except for a few years away at school. And I went to Cubberley, right around the corner, as well. I know Amy did as well. I'm disappointed Roger's not here. His son was my shortstop in Little League. So Matthew, and so there's a lot of kind of coming home here for me. When I was first contacted about doing this project, I was really excited because, you know, I rode my bicycle through there. We spent time in the park playing basketball, doing all that stuff as a kid. So while the architecture is fairly basic and straightforward, and kind of knew it fairly well from, you know, living in 3 different Eichlers over the course of my life in Palo Alto, you know, the opportunity to work with the community and to work on this really cool site was certainly something I look forward to. So, you know, I thank Amy for giving us a great presentation. The main things that we really kind of looked to do here on this project was to make sure that we integrated it with the existing building. And I appreciate the Page and Turnbull report because it actually gives us a little bit more flexibility, I think, to modernize a couple of features on the building. And that was something exciting. We really took the approach that we wanted to integrate it completely with the existing structures. And so we chased down not only, you know, the Eichler color palette, but also the wood siding types and things like that, while trying to integrate. We're going to have to integrate more modern window systems and things like that for energy at the same time. But after a lot of working back and forth, I think we've created a building that will feel like it was part of the original facility. And as far as concept, you know, getting a sort of a grander stair to just a slight rise up to the park to be able to get to the building, having the barbecue facilities overlooking the pool area, and being able to sort of integrate people's functions with that amenity. We're also looking at hopefully allowing for budget just above the barbecue area, adding an upper terrace of sort of concrete and extending the historical sort of bench. They've got a poured-in-place concrete bench that if you walked around the pool, you saw it on some of the perimeter. We want to recall that. We do have that in our design as it goes right up against the building. And then the terrace would be just above that. And if we're able to fit it in the budget, the secondary terrace would extend that bench back to pretty close to its original historical location, too. So, you know, we're definitely excited about it. Part of the reason I think, you know, they chose to go this path was obviously, you know, this is an older complex. Our accessibility standards are not met, and they would have had a significant investment in making all of those items accessible, and then also losing some capacity for the functional use of that. So what we've done here is provided those accessible elements, bathroom and a shower. You know, we had the pleasure of having Mr. Dunbar, your inspector for accessibility in Palo Alto, come through and look at the plans. And I've worked with Robert before on other buildings, and so having that basically get a preliminary blessing was big to us, and kind of reinforce the concept that we're heading in the right direction. by providing a modern application, but into this, what has become really a historical community center. I really don't have, a PowerPoint. I probably could have, but, if we end up coming back to you guys to show us or share more, we can. I take no exception to the page and turn bill, report at all. I think it gives us good ideas to move forward with, and we're happy. We've already discussed, looking at these things and working on the items that they suggested. And I just would like to offer the opportunity to answer any questions for you guys, and just a pleasure to be here really on a rainy day.
Great, thank you, Bud. Any questions for applicant or staff? Beth?
One question that came to mind, and we always have to look at the Secretary of Interior standards. Those are our guidelines. And there's one that's number 9, and it can often be a tough one because you've worked to make it compatible. It's low, but in terms of differentiation, what do you see as a factor that would be a differentiation from what's there?
May I interrupt for a second, please, for that question? Beth, could you actually maybe read what Standard 9 is so that members of the public can understand when we mention Standard 9, what is Standard 9? Useful information for the public.
Here.
I can read it for you unless you don't have it.
You want to do it
Yeah.
for me?
So I just wanted to add that just so that helps complete the conversation for understanding. So Standard 9 is new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction shall not destroy historic materials that characterize the property. The new work shall be differentiated from the old and shall be compatible with the massing, scale, size, architectural features to protect the historical integrity of the property and its environment. I just wanted to add that, Kate. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. Should I go ahead and respond, Beth, at this point?
Pardon?
Go ahead and respond. Does that finish your question? Okay. So, obviously, maybe it's not obvious, but we feel that the massing part of this definitely integrates with the existing community center and the buildings that surround there. The differentiation is, I should say, as designed right now, is mostly on the interior, obviously, with it being a different function, modern sort of finishes and things like that would take place. Certainly the page and turn bill report, has identified a couple things that we can do on the outside with the exterior siding stuff that would complete the picture of it being a newer structure. So I think that's a path that we will certainly take. The amenities that are going to be surrounding this building are going to be definitely new, right? We're going to end up with, I'm sure, some LED site lighting, and the barbecue is going to be new. We've integrated a barbecue place on the outside of the building. My Eichler on Los Robles, when I was growing up, had an indoor barbecue, which was awesome. And so we kind of picked up on that idea, but turned it around and put it on the outside so that there's actually a place that people can use to barbecue when the pool is closed for a park function. So it kind of gives another opportunity to the residents to be able to have a birthday party or do something in the park. So we think that's going to pick up the function of the park area as far as the community use. And yeah, Sherry would like to add something.
So one idea, again, we just got this feedback, so we haven't thought about that much, but for exterior cladding, one of the things a lot of the people in the neighborhood are doing is horizontal cladding instead of the vertical. A lot of times it's cedar wrapped, it's very lovely. I don't know if we can afford it, but something maybe in that vein. I don't know if you guys would approve of that, but if you look at the vertical striping, almost every width is traditional Eichler as far as I can tell. There's the narrow, there's the medium, and there's the wide, the plank tech. So it seems, unless we go like this, which I don't know, I mean, I haven't thought about it that much, but another approach might be horizontal, which is being done in the neighborhood, is consistent, but is a little bit more modern. That would be an idea. I don't know.
Yeah.
We're in questions first before we start talking about design issues. Any other questions for Board Member Fusiko?
Yeah, it's a kind of a very general question. The wall is going to be removed to accommodate the new building, and I couldn't tell or read it anywhere. Is there going to be fencing between the cul-de-sac public street at the end of the park, or is this new building going to be just open all the way from looking down from Alma? And the other, on the other end, the building that is now Montessori School, correct? Mm-hmm. Is that still owned by the association, and it's like leased?
Yeah.
And is that down the road you would take back the use of that building too, or is that just something that's not even on the radar?
That's a great question. So, so when we're, so right now, so there's no HOA or anything like that funds this stuff. So we have two sources of income, two main sources of income. One is pool memberships and one is the lease of the school. And so currently the neighborhood thinks the lease of the school is working well, it's generating a good amount of income, and we like that use. There's not too much parking or traffic, and things like that. It's relatively quiet. So the neighborhood hasn't talked that much about reverting it, but it's an excellent question because we have thought about it, and we're like, is this the best use of this space for the community? Right now, it's purely an income generator. It doesn't build community at all. It doesn't really serve the neighborhood at all, but it's working for us. So right now, we want to maintain that and get the income from that. The other question about the wall, you can answer.
Sure.
You can. So that's also a really good question. So right now, there is the park is private, but it's not fenced in. So it's accessible to the public. Right now, we aim to keep that. There will be locks on the doors of the clubhouse, so the bathrooms, for example, will not be public bathrooms. The people in the neighborhood will have a key code, and you'll need to know the key code, and we'll monitor that, and we can adjust it as needed. But we don't plan right now to fence it off because it's just a little bit more open and friendly the way that it is now. But yeah, so you would be able to see. So from Alma, you will be able to see the wall. Now, one thing that we are reintroducing that was in the original plans, but that doesn't exist today, is a strip of trees on that, I don't know what it is, south, north, what, but on that end of the park, which will help to screen the building. One of the feedback that we got from the people in the neighborhood is we like to have undeveloped space. It's kind of rare in Palo Alto to have this. It's a park. We like to have a park. And we don't want this building to be too much in your face, so we've kept it low. We want to, and we think the trees will help to screen it a little bit and make it still seem natural. A bunch of the wall is staying, and it's going to be ivy covered and lovely the way that it is today. So that's the current thinking. It was a good question.
Board Member Bauer.
So I'd like to congratulate you on what I consider to be a very compatible building. I have a couple so I'll start with that because I think this is a nice design. I have a couple of small issues that I'd like to hear about.
So we're going to start with questions, then open to the public, and then we'll talk about design.
It's actually an architectural question.
Okay, great, thank you.
The concrete block wall on the plan says it matches existing, but then, of course, we need to differentiate that wall because it's a new wall from the old wall. Have you thought about how you do that?
No, but I mean, we could easily. It's a standard, concrete block wall painted, I guess, right now. So it is pretty much normal. We could go to a split-faced block. We could go to a fluted sort of block or something like that. We were sort of leaning in the direction of, since we are taking away a decent chunk of the concrete wall, of sort of matching it, even though it's going to be, for the most part low where the bench is and things like that. And just, again, to Patricia's point, that we've integrated some wrought iron fencing at the perimeter of the pool to secure the pool, which they have currently facing the parking lot, so that we're sort of keeping that sort of design and feel integrated a little bit. But, you know, when you guys talk about the design, you know, we're going to be open to really any concept and looking at any of your ideas. I think, you know, to the community center and certainly to Sherry, you know, making this a success for both themselves and for Palo Alto is really on their agenda. So,
So another question, where is the current refuge enclosure?
there is none.
Okay. Did you consider other locations for that besides the one on the plans?
Not much. I mean, we looked at, you know, where it is shown on the plan right now. We looked more to the left in the parking lot area. We're definitely thinking it needs to be off of the parking lot to be able to allow Palo Alto Sanitation to get to it. The other location to the left kind of made it feel like it was going to be more of an alleyway, you know, more hidden to get behind the building or behind the refuse enclosure and get to the park. And so that was really the reason that we chose to integrate it more into the pool area. It did take up a little bit of their lawn area, but it seemed to feel like, as far as a people path, it was a better decision.
So the reason I bring that up is that when I was out on the site, I realized that that refuge enclosure is going to actually have a significant visual impact on the way in which that property now is experienced by people who are walking up. There's that very nice long walkway from the sidewalk all the way in through that, which is a really beautiful architectural feature. And to have that garbage enclosure right next to that walkway bothered me, so I'm just wondering if you had other thoughts about it.
I just wanted to add, like, one of the things that Matt said, we talked to Matt right before he left, and he just gave us one piece of advice, which was fewer structures. You know, so one of the reasons why we embedded it was kind of one less structure, but yeah, we found out now that it's on an easement, you know, I mean, we're open to moving it. One idea I had was just put it all the way in the front corner of the parking lot. So we don't even pretend that it's historic, and we just kind of get it out of the way, and we leave at least the main historic thing. You see what I mean? To pull it all the way forward into the front, and then it's out of the way of that, and you maintain the walkways and things like that.
Sure. It's a difficult problem. You have to
Yeah.
have it. It has to be put on the site somewhere. Typically, as I see properties, older properties around North Palo Alto developed, particularly as an example, the property on the corner of Channing and Middlefield, which is a single-story, low dental office,
Yeah.
L-shaped building. They've put it all the way back on the side, as far away from Middlefield as they can, and it still matches the rest of the building, but it doesn't take away from the majesty of that architecture as you approach the building. So, I guess those are the two questions and more discussion on it. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Wimmer.
Hi. I had a couple questions just about the heights. So it looks like from the pool decking, you go up to this sort of raised terrace. So you go up roughly 4 steps, so that might be 24 inches for this raised terrace. And then I see that the building, the overall height of the new building is 12 feet. So I just wanted to understand that in reference to the existing building to the right side of the pool. And what's the overall height of that long linear building that's currently there?
I think we're talking the same height as our lower portion of our building. So it's, you know, down in the 9 to 10 foot scenario. We did actually look at a completely one-level building originally, and it was actually me sort of pushing them a little bit to say, hey, you know, you're going to have a community room. I think a little bit taller ceiling would feel good. There's certainly quite a few different sort of architectural steps in Eichler buildings or Eichler homes where you see different elevation heights being incorporated. So, I mean, that was really the premise of taking that portion of the building a little bit higher. And you're right on the steps. It's going to be somewhere around probably 24 to 28 inches. So it will appear somewhat higher than the pool structure. But I think for the use and function, that's probably a good thing. Because it is going to be a little bit more of a dynamic sort of use and building, and it's obviously going to be new to all these people, and having it have a little bit more substantial presence seems like the right thing to me. Anyway.
And then I see a gate between the terrace, the raised terrace, and then the sort of the terrace that's in between the community room and the basketball court. And it looks like those gates are 8 feet tall.
They're 8 foot wide.
Oh, 8 foot wide, not 8 foot
wide.
tall. So
Yeah.
the height of those gates would be
It's
common?
probably going to be about 6.5 feet.
Because that's probably what you're required to have around the pool for
Yeah.
safety reasons.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? So I've got a couple. One is for staff. Is this property, is it fall into any of our historic categories, 1, 2, 3, or 4?
It's nationally, and as you know, California registered because it's national registered. But the way our code is written, it does not capture those that as automatically being on our historic resource inventory as any category 1, 2, 3, or 4. But the importance of it is such that this discretionary application elevates it to this level where we do CEQA review and we bring it to the board.
Okay, great. My other question is on page 3 of the staff report. The chart says cultural resources with the project. On A, I'll read it. It says, cause a substantial adverse change in the significance of a historical resource. And then the options on that question is it's potentially significant impact, less than significant with mitigation, less than significant, no impact. Does staff or Mr. Rush have any comment on which box might be checked? It's on page 3 of the staff report. The top
Right,
chart.
so again, because it's on the California Register, it is subject to CEQA, and that's what this checklist is about, is, staff has to make sure that the project will get to a point where there won't be an impact.
Right.
Because if there is, or it needs mitigation, then we have to go through a larger exercise.
Yeah. So my question is there any indication of where as we're seeing it today, which box might be checked?
Given the current design, I think that in a lot of ways it's a very compatible, and in a certain sense it is I'm trying to think of how to phrase this, but the differentiation is an issue that we're looking for some improvement in. For that reason, it is not entirely standards compliant. So I don't know at the current stage of development, we could say that it's a less than significant impact, but it's hovering around there. I don't know if that's a very precise way of putting it, but it's not far off from that in my mind. I think that there's an additional question about the impact to the landscape, and that was brought up in our report, right. That I think that it would be helpful to have a little bit more understanding of what features in the landscape date to the original construction of the park and neighborhood would be impacted. So I understand that the pool has changed quite a bit, but the wall itself has not. And a section of that wall will be removed. That does seem to indicate that it would be a removal of historic fabric. Again, not entirely standards compliant for that reason, but I think the larger question is if that elevates it to something greater than a less than significant impact. I guess I'm still trying to think through a few of those issues, so having more information about the landscape and history of the landscape would be very helpful.
Okay, great, thank you. And welcome, Board Member Kohler. Okay. Good, welcome. Another question I have, it's for, I think it'd be for the applicant. As you've heard from Board Member Bunnenberg mention, Standard 9 can be a challenging standard to address. And one of the other issues that City of Palo Alto looks at when we look at that Standard 9 about compatibility and differentiation, another standard we use is how is any proposed new construction subordinate to the historical structure? So the question would be, how would your proposal be viewed as being subordinate to the historical aspect of the existing buildings.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure I understand the question either.
Yeah, so...
We're saying, go ahead.
Yeah, so that standard about subordination is that, so when a visitor comes to the property, they can see the significant historical structures, so that'd be the existing Eichler structure there, so that when if a new structure is added to the historic property, so that the historical structure is a more dominant character defining form, and then whatever is new is kind of subordinate to it and not standing out as dominant.
Gotcha. Thank you for the clarification. I think the basic premise of this would be, as you enter, as you mentioned on the very nice walkway from the street that's lined with trees and things, you're going to see all of the existing structures first. Those will all be in plain sight as you approach, and it really won't be until you get, quite close to the pool area where you're going to get a glimpse of the new building off to the side. The other piece, I think that's just the right place site-wise to accomplish that, and it just happened to be the right place site-wise to accomplish the tasks that they're looking for. And with the landscaping being added from the park area to help screen the building itself, that should help minimize its impact. However, coming from the park area, there really wasn't much of a view of the existing buildings at all. You got a fence there and a basketball court, it really takes prominence.
Yeah, thank you for that. And the basis I'm asking that, and the basis I asked that question was that both you and Sherry mentioned some actually very good goals about architecturally integrating and the idea of compatibility. So it's a good thing. But we, as an HRB, Historic Resources Board, we're given the city of Palo Alto's task of, that standard 9. And that's why Board Member Bunenberg mentioned that that's a challenging thing. But sounds like you've answered that well. Thank you. Board Member DeSico.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of enlarge on the cultural landscape and the shrubbery and trees, given very little separation from the public park. Is there been further research that what is really available, that was Thomas Church original design, what trees are there, how many trees need to be removed? Yesterday when I was at the park, in the park section, there were 2 folks with 4 dogs. If those had been my dogs, they would have leapt into the pool given the opportunity. And it kind of would concern me that, trees take a long time to grow too, and whether this is enough, basically, I guess, security for the members of the association.
So I can address some of that. So first of all, we're only removing 2 trees. We were only going to remove 1, and Dave Doctor said, no, you need to remove that other one. He doesn't like Siberian elms, so it's fine. So 2 trees are going to go, and I think the neighborhood felt bad about one of them, but the structural integrity of the trees, like one of them, the arborist said, take it down ASAP. Dogs, okay, people, I was out there with my dog yesterday when Beth stopped by. People like to walk and play with their dogs there. The perimeter is going to stay intact, so there is no way that a dog can get into the pool. That's why there are the fences and the gates and these rules around self-closing and stuff like that. So there's no concern at all about dogs running into the pool. My dog will run around to the other side and go in the gate. And the pool is very friendly toward dogs and things like that. But it's not, practically, it shouldn't be a problem. There is one dog walker who's pretty incensed about this whole thing. But I think with the trees and with the benches, it will still be very much like a park.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next I'd like to open up this item to members of the public. If any members of the public like to speak on this event, please make yourself seen. Okay, sure, go ahead, Beth.
it would be very helpful to have color samples of the colors that you list, and maybe a sample of the concrete block, because I don't know whether they look the same or simply the fact that it's many years later and they may not look the same. And also, the report talks about the possibility of using perhaps a wider spaced vertical wood feature rather than the thin space, which is so typical of the Eichlers of this era. Would that be acceptable to you?
Sure. I mean, that's be sort of normal practice as we move forward with the ARB, but we could put that together very easily.
Thank you. Okay, let's bring it back to members of the public who like to speak on this agenda item. If there's any members of the public like to speak, and I'd also like to invite Councilmember Holman, please.
I have a question. It's not clear who the applicant is. I mean, I know you're here speaking, but I don't know that everything says the applicant proposed, the applicant this, the applicant that. So are you a representative of the Green Meadow Neighborhood Association, or what formal authority, quote unquote, do you have?
Okay. So I don't know. So there's the Green Meadow Community Association is a formal body, and they have set up a committee which is called the 20 Now Committee. This is whatever the name, and I am on that committee with 2 or 3 other people. So, and my responsibility on that committee is design. So somebody else's responsibility will be like working with the contractors, for example, and getting the surveys done and stuff like that. So I am here as a member. I'm definitely on the committee. The committee is a formally approved part of the GMCA. It's a good question. I don't.
But has the committee looked at these plans and
Oh,
approved them?
absolutely.
Has it gone out to the rest?
And we voted. There was a big presentation. We've circulated all kinds of things and handed them out to all the households, and they have voted on this, and we have a newsletter that goes out and is distributed to the neighborhoods. There's a lot of information about this. Not only has all the neighborhood seen this, but the board has certainly seen this and is very supportive of it.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's really
Yeah.
helpful, 'cause you understand the question, because everything just
Yeah,
says
yeah,
the
yeah,
applicant.
So and I'm taking it for granted just because our neighborhood is so active, but
Yeah.
absolutely.
I know
there's-
it is, yeah.
All of the neighborhood knows about this, or if they don't, they're not paying attention. I mean, they have had handouts on their doorstep. There are emails that are going around. There's a sign posted there, and the board is very supportive, yeah.
Great,
And there was
good
a 3-year discussion preceding this. So
Okay, good.
it's a good question.
It's helpful clarification, and it's a great cohesive neighborhood.
Yes.
That does spark in one more question I do have for Sherry. Are there any conditions, covenants, and restrictions in this development that control what happens for this project? So.
Hi, that's a good question. So there are CCNRs, a single story I think would apply. So our neighborhood is all single story. And needs to be compatible with Eichler, so we cannot renovate our houses in any way that is not compatible with Eichler. And there's an architecture, another part of GMCA is there's an architecture review board, like our own version of it, which looks at things. And so we have been working with the architecture board in Green Meadow to review some of the things like colors and lighting and stuff like that. They're very busy people, so they don't weigh in as much as we would like, I guess, but we're working with them as well. And they need to approve this. So they need to write a letter that says we approve this thing before we can submit it, and that letter has to be a part of this submittal.
Okay, and I do see the proposed height of the new structure is still meets the definition of 1 story, so that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, all right. I see no members of the public are present for this agenda item. We can continue with our study session, and that can include additional comments. I'm going to keep the public hearing open. Is it a study session? Is this considered a public hearing, even though it's a study session? Yeah. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a noticed hearing, a regular meeting date of the board.
Sure.
So,
So I'm going to keep this open so we have interactive conversation between us, staff, and the applicant representatives. So back to the board for any comments. Board Member Bauer.
So follow up on my earlier questions. what I remember when I worked on Eichlers in the 70s is that the siding was a unique dimension. In fact, we always had to have it milled. So one of the ways that I would recommend that you differentiate your new siding from the original Eichler siding is not to reproduce that pattern. And you're right, there is the 4-inch groove, there's a 6-inch. I don't know if they got wider than that, but yeah, right. So the point I'm trying to make is I would use a readily available siding and maybe even something like a V-groove siding, which is not what he used. They always, Eichler, you know, he owned his own redwood groves and he owned his own mill, and he made everything for all of his houses the same way. For economy, that's why they were half as much as all the other houses. So that's one thing to consider. The second thing I would consider in the concrete block wall, I'm pretty sure those are 8 by 16 blocks. Rather than use a fluted block, which I don't think is appropriate, I would just use a different size. So I'm pretty sure you can get a 4 by 16. So you see the 4-inch, even though it's smaller in scale and it's gonna, you know, I'm a little concerned about how busy that would be. That's a differentiation. Same material, but it's clearly not the original material. They only used 8 by 16 blocks in the 60s and 50s because that's what was there. Now we have hundreds of styles, multiple styles. So that's another issue. The other thing I just noticed on the plans is there is a 10-foot utility easement right across the front, and the refuge is right on top of it. And last time I looked, you can't put any permanent structure on a utility easement, so that'll help me get you to move the. Also, I don't even see how the garbage men get in to get the garbage because it's back in the corner and it could be parked in. Not likely at 4 in the morning when they're coming to collect the garbage, but just something to consider.
Yeah, we just found out about the easement, so one approach is if it's a paper easement, we can appeal to the utilities companies if we like where it is. I think your feedback is great. It's tough to figure out where to put this thing, you know, and if it's a separate structure, is that a problem? Do we bury it in foliage if it's a separate structure? I don't know. I don't know. I think the refuse thing is going to be an issue that we have to figure out.
So one last comment. The way that I interpret this new building as being compatible and subordinate to the existing buildings, first of all, it's differentiated by the fact that it's going to be new and the other buildings are pretty tired and really need to be renovated. It surprises me that you could have a daycare center in a building that probably hasn't been upgraded in, who knows, if ever. But what I like about the positioning of the building is it has a significant distance between the original buildings that are on the property and this new building. It's in the same style, so that's compatible to me, but the distance and the fact that you don't really see it when you are approaching the main complex gives me some comfort that this can be a little taller than the other buildings and still be subordinate because it's off to the side. So I think this is a great project, and I'm hoping that when it comes back to us that these little tiny nitpicking details that we're giving you some grief about will easily be resolved.
Amy, will as the project proceeds, because this is considered preliminary, we'd like to request that it does come back to HRB, correct? Yeah, great, thanks. Good. Beth?
Interesting that my understanding is that these plans have been worked on for about 5 years and that they have involved everyone. And I was particularly interested to hear that the neighbor who would be most impacted by that garbage refuse structure was pleased to see it. And so I think that it sounds like you've been very respectful of letting people know, and we don't have anyone here protesting it, and so that it feels to me also that I was surprised by the distance between those surrounding houses and this new structure. I think the location looks like it has given them some space rather than feeling like it's backed right up to my backyard. And so I like that part of it very much. And when we get to discussing the sequel phase, why, should I make comments on that now?
Sure.
In terms of whether it would cause substantial adverse change to the significance, I would almost see it as no impact. I don't know what the other board members feel. We don't have, well, there were certainly some structures a long time ago, and we don't know what the Native Americans had, but you're not going deeply enough in the soil to end up with any effect there. And paleontology the same way, and human remains very unlikely. So that would be my thought, that is very respectful of the site.
Board Member DeSicio.
What I think might be helpful at our next meeting, or when it's further reviewed, would be to have perhaps the streetscape of the cul-de-sac and the buildings that are all, there's 220 or something that are contributing, which is a really great number for the total of 248 or something, as I read. If perhaps the streetscape and the colors and which have been selected by your association already, if that's what's going to be the possibilities for the project in proximity to it, I think it would be helpful to see that. And I also think, given what we're not at any phase as to what possibility is going to be used for the building, my thought would be to have the full glass facing toward the pool and the rest of the association property, as opposed to the park, and have that, on the site plan, the lesser glazed windows on the facing the cul-de-sac. I don't, it's hard to tell from just these plans and the difference between how they're going to sit. And number one says facing the pool with the sliding doors as opposed to the other side. It would make more sense to me. But I think it would be nice to be able to see the whole view of it with the park and with the trees and the locations of them.
I just want to add a comment. We can't have sliding doors facing the pool because of the pool perimeter rules. So those need to be the swing kind of door. So that's why the sliding doors are on the other side, yeah.
Okay, thank you. My question or comment, or comment on your site plan, A1.1. Take that. A1.1, enlarged. It's called enlarged site plan. Anyway, so you're showing. I see the steps going up. Have you considered having steps and ramps going up, having the same number of steps and ramps going down? That would lower the building by about 2 feet or so, and so that would bring the tall structure from 12 feet. In essence, brings it down to about 10 feet high, brings then the proposed 9-foot structure down about 7 feet high above those grade levels. Just to help subordinate the new construction to the existing historic. Have you considered, instead of going up, to go down the same distance?
We did consider, essentially, I think leveling it. I think it's what you're kind of getting to, where the plane of the pool surface would be equal. I think that would end up obviously dropping the building from the park side. You'd end up having to come down some stairs to get to the building, and then some retaining walls along the existing paving path. And so that would probably create, for safety's sake, some additional railing, just because if you're going to have kids on bicycles or skateboards or whatever, and there's a retaining wall where they could fall down. Okay. So I think the way we have it makes more sense, certainly for the park side, and in a way, being able to step up to the building, we kind of felt like that's makes it a little bit more special for the use portion, and also gives the people that might be in the building having a function or out on the terrace a nice view of the pool versus just a straight across. So those were features that we did talk about. We did move the ramp, sort of away from the pool area a little bit so that it has a clear path, but since it is going to be somewhat longer, it's not invasive to the design, really. It's hoping to tuck away, and we're actually going to use it to hide the pool covers, too. Right. So we did think about those things, Martin.
Okay, appreciate it. Good. Board Member Kohler.
Oh, sure. Thank you. I wanted to make a couple of comments just on the exterior and how you're approaching that and treating it. And I'm actually in favor of lifting the height of the building up a little bit, just because I know that with Eichlers and the design of it, there's a challenge to get the appropriate amount of insulation up in the ceiling cavity, and the current Eichlers really don't give you any opportunity to do any recessed lighting. I don't know how you're thinking about heating the building, if you want to do the traditional radiant heat or if you want to do some kind of forced air system. So I think given the low height approach that you are presenting here is going to present some challenges with those very essential items. So I think the building, to me, looks a little bit low. And I know that there's a conversation about subordination, but maybe this is, instead of trying to make it subordinate to the existing buildings that have a significant distance between this new building, maybe raising it up could offer an opportunity for differentiation. I see that the bathrooms only have 2 small windows, and the bathrooms are going to be used probably quite a bit. So if you can somehow get more natural light into the bathrooms, so maybe raising the height of the roof, maybe even 12 inches or something, would allow you to get maybe some more windows in there, some more natural light, because people going in and out of those are going to be highly used. And if you don't have the natural light, you're going to have to turn on artificial light, and someone's going to leave the light on, what have you. So I'm just thinking ahead, or maybe a skylight would be something that you...
we're planning on skylights.
I think you need more natural light in there. And I kind of like what you're doing with those sort of the nano doors or the expansive accordion glass that faces the park side, but I'm not really crazy about, in that same room, how you have different heights of windows and doors, so I would keep that consistent. I do see that you have a fireplace on the inside of that room, but you're not showing any venting or flue mechanism. There's a fireplace on the inside that faces the...
We actually show a flue. It's probably hard to see on your
maybe it is.
very small
okay.
plan.
I see it. I guess I would have a little question about attaching the barbecue element on the outside, just for fire safety issues. And I know that there's a detached barbecue, but it's on the other side of the fence.
Right.
Closer to the pool, maybe you can combine those
We
things.
did actually talk with fire department about the barbecue,
Okay.
and they were fine with it.
Questioning. And then I guess I think that community room, it might be, I don't know, did you consider a vaulted ceiling, because I know a lot of Eichlers have a vaulted ceiling. I'm sure you did.
Yes.
I just think that could be a really cool room with maybe a little bit more volume of space and some of those exposed beams that are traditional with Eichlers. I mean, just going in and having a flat ceiling, I don't know. It could just be more of a celebrated space, maybe.
Right.
And then, I had another thought, now I'm forgetting. And I think about the trash. I see that the trash bins are located in that corner. Maybe if you just rotate them 90 degrees and sort of face them to the left, so the doors are on. It looks more detached, and you don't read it as a part of the kind of landscape elevation. If you just kind of rotate it and push it off to the side.
Sorry, any comments? This is the public hearing. We need it to be mic'd because it's recorded. Thank you.
I would love to do that. I'm not sure if the truck can get in there. It's not a very big walkway, but that would be ideal if they could, yeah.
Okay, and sorry, I remembered my last comment, sorry. So on the elevation, the west elevation, on the bathroom sides, you don't pull an overhang, that's a flush fascia overhang, and that looks, because the rest of the building has an overhang, and that just looks like maybe, I would pull that same overhang on that end. So those are my comments.
Thank you.
All right, Roger.
I guess I have to disclose things, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Well, it's been years, but I had 2 children, Heather and Matthew. We spent hours and hours and hours at that wonderful place, and so I know how it works fairly well. Also, I would not be, I also have 2 dogs, so I'm a dog person. 175 pounds of dogs. So, I think this is a great project. I'm not sure I have a whole lot of comment. There was, the only thing and part of the problem is getting old is you forget to set the alarm and you have trouble remembering things. I think the raising of the community building level with the rear part of where the activity is brings the whole building up, what is it, 3 feet, 2 feet? 2 feet. And having spent hours and hours watching the pool and the kids, that's going to be really a huge, nice thing to do, where you'll be able to see the pool really well. You'll get a better idea of what's going on, and it's actually, I think, a pretty good safety feature. I wouldn't lower it because it's so subtle. You've got to decide one way or the other. If you had it level with the pool, then there'd be retaining walls in the back, and it does make a lot of sense to me that if there's a lot of activities going in and out from the lawn area over to community building is more active, whereas the raising the house up to on the pool side, you're a little more careful getting in and out of the pool, and it gives a tremendous view of what's going on, both for homeowners, moms and dads, as well as for the actual lifeguard people. So I think it's a pretty good solution. If you go, having grew up here, all the different pools we've been to, Rinconada and Wilbur and things like, well, it's not Wilbur anymore, but the pool is, I think it's a pretty good solution myself. I think it's actually a huge improvement because for safety-wise alone. So, other than that, I think it's, there's all kinds of different ways to do that, and basically the building has the look of an Eichler, whether it's got wide boards or, in my mind, I don't really care, but I think it's an appropriate structure. So I'm ready to vote for it. I guess we can't yet. So.
Okay, I have some other comments on design. As I mentioned, I visited the site, and I think some other board members mentioned, when you approach from the parking lot to the existing buildings that are there, there's certainly a quality of horizontality and the lowness. So when you come into the breezeway between, you got the Montessori on the right, and then anyway, definitely low. if you consider on this project for the new proposed buildings, to have those to help emphasize the horizontality, to have horizontal siding on the proposed new structure, just to keep that horizontal feeling. Because I know, in Victorian, you got the vertical, so you put a lot of verticality. I understand this is a common Eichler approach. We see that at the Edgewood Shopping Center. You see that vertical, same detail. But to have the new structure, since we're going up 12-foot high structure on one of the buildings there, to have horizontal boards on there, just to see how that looks like. Have you considered that, or maybe that's part of your...
I would say we're considering it now.
Okay,
you
yeah.
know.
I would not vote for that,
Yeah.
just to let you know.
So it's just the horizontality, because the architectural feel, and that's going to be one of the other measures that as the project continues. It's one of the other measures of compatibility is architectural feel. And so again, repeating the sense I have when I approach the property at the beginning, low horizontality. So what can you do with this proposed 12-foot structures and the 9-foot structure to keep that horizontal? So again, it doesn't change the function. You can look at what impact it has on budget, but again, just the architectural feel. Okay, for that. And then with that, I'd like to invite if Mr. Rush has any comments on the idea of compatibility in terms of horizontality. That'd be great. Excuse me, we have other board member conversations going on. I'll wait till we clear that up. Okay, go ahead.
Well, we're
please,
trying
Scott.
to decide
Yeah.
whether to go there today and swim or not.
Okay, yes, good. Okay, Mr. Rush, please.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? So my comments on the horizontality of...
Question is just more of a general comment or discussion that you would offer about the idea of compatibility and differentiation with the proposed structure regarding the historical resource.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In terms of standards compliance, I don't think that having a horizontal board, when you're thinking about compatibility, I don't think that having a horizontal board is perhaps the very best solution, but I don't know that it would automatically tilt in the direction of non-compliance. So in my kind of understanding of it, I don't see having horizontal siding as being, the needle that would break the camel's back, so to speak. So I don't think it would tip this into a substantial adverse effect.
So repeating the main reason I brought this subject is the architectural feel of the historic of existing structure and then the new structure. So just something for you as the applicant designer to consider. That's all. Good. That's my comment.
No, Martin,
Yes,
I just don't understand the switch. I mean, it's a new building, it's going to be raised up, it's taller than the other building, it's obviously a newer building, and it will be newer because probably even the glazing, I don't know if the glazing is going to match the existing or not. It'll be new, it'll be double paned if the other ones, So I think it's going to make it more, I think it just becomes more of an eyesore in the sense that everything else is vertical and suddenly you got this building that's horizontal. It just to me seems out of touch with the general feel of the entire neighborhood.
Okay. Okay. All right, Board Member Moore.
So I'm a little confused about the height of the new building as it relates to the park on the west side and the pool on the east side. It looks like you're going down about 4 risers, something like 30 inches, 32 inches. There's no way to raise the building that I can see so that it is even with the pool deck without having on the other side, the west side, to have some kind of ramping or stairs out of there. I mean, the point, as I understand the design, is to get the building at the park level and then step up to the pool level. So raising the building finished floor to the pool level creates another bigger problem on the other side. Is that right? Because
no, actually, the building finished floor will closely mirror what the level of the park is currently. The pool level is about 30 inches lower. So you're actually going down from our building to the pool. I think we're going to end up not quite having 30 inches. We're looking more at probably 26, 28 at the most.
Interesting.
By the time it's all said and done, with a little bit of slope on the deck and such. But, you know, so it is essentially opposite of what you're saying, David.
Right, okay. Because I couldn't find that floor elevation on the new building. I can see it around the pool, the survey.
Right,
numbers.
yeah.
But I
We
couldn't
can
find.
certainly add that so it's a little bit clearer.
Well, I'm just trying to, actually, a section, of course, of the pool deck
Mm-hmm.
and the building would be helpful when you come back to us, because that would have made
Mm-hmm.
it easier to understand this.
Yep.
So I don't get a sense that that neighborhood had a lot of slope in it. I mean, I grew up there and watched those buildings being built. It was just fields when I was in elementary school. So they must have raised the grade in that park or somehow rearranged the grade to create that offset from the pool, and putting a swimming pool below sort of ambient grade is counterintuitive, especially when you consider we used to have rain in this city. So I'm not sure, you know, I don't want to be more invasive, have this project become more invasive in the park area, but maybe there's a way to have that building come up and still be able to get out of it, you know, get out from the park side without having to go downstairs.
You don't have to go. From the park side, the building, you walk outside and you're going to be right at the current.
Yeah, I'm thinking of trying to make the new building flush or close to the same level as the pool deck, so that flows into that space. But then the other side of it, you know, you're going to have to depress the building,
Right,
and then you have to climb out of it.
right.
Anyway, something to think about.
Well, Bud and Chair, I just want to say thank you for your patience. We have a 121-page booklet here called Secretary of Interior Standards, and so again, we're being responsive to the City of Palo Alto's regulations, so that's why you're hearing these comments. So, okay. Right, additional comments, suggestions, board members?
Can I respond to one or two things?
Oh, please,
Or-
yes.
So Margaret asked about the eave on the bathroom side. That's been a point of contention. Bud wants the eave. I had removed the eave because a bunch of the houses just don't have eaves, so it's not the case that there are eaves everywhere. You know, my house and lots of the houses don't have eaves uniformly. The reason on there is because the path on that side is not super wide, and if you have the eave, it encroaches further, hides the sky. It's more of a feeling of openness in that path as you're walking through, and safety, you know, if you're a woman, and more light and stuff like that if there's not the eave. That's the thinking around it. I don't know that we're still, I don't know we've quite agreed on that yet, but at least I wanted to explain that. And then I think it's Jonathan, you asked about which structures were original in the park, is that right?
Well, I think we have the image in the presentation that shows a rendering of the park and structures as originally designed, but
Yeah.
it's still a question as to which of these elements were really put in place and
So
when.
I can answer that if you want, because we went and tried to look at old photos and
Sure.
things like that, because we were curious. The oldest photo that we have, the trees were not there, the wall was there, but the basketball court was not there in the very beginning. Like, it looked like lawn and there were people picnicking. So I think that was added a little bit afterward. As far as the neighbors can remember, it's been there for a really long time, but I think that the wall was there and the basketball court may have delayed by like 5 or 10 years or something like that. And the trees, I think, were never there. But everything else was built the way it is now. The pool was sunk. So the pool is a sunken feature. That whole thing is, right now, it's no more than 2 feet down. It's between 20 to 24 inches down, and there was that sitting wall that sort of, kids would hang out on the sitting wall, and it was dangle their legs, that 2 feet kind of thing between the park and the pool.
Could I have a quick question?
Yeah.
Over in the corner, it says privacy for
Gregarious.
What does it mean? What's the last word?
I mean, you guys know a lot about Eichler, but go ahead.
I think we're talking playful people. They're gregarious. So the neighbors that want to go out and have a good time and swim and have a good time.
Yeah.
Member DeSico, you had your, okay, Tim. Right. Amy, so next step, this goes to Architecture Review Board and then back to us? Is that the next step?
Well, next step is getting to a complete application, because it is a conditional use permit and architectural review application. So we want to, I guess, it sounds great that there are additional photos that Sherry has possession of. So those kinds of documents would be very helpful for us to submit any documentation of that park. I mean, because I think that's the additional research that we need to do is regarding the cultural landscape. And what was actually installed versus that lovely photo rendering that we have here. So we can make some further determinations regarding the proposal along the park edge there. Yeah, and then yes, we would. You've requested to come back. I think that makes sense. We would come back to you, before going to the ARB, unless we determine that. We'll just have the HRB conduct the hearing and then keep it at kind of a staff level architectural review and let this body become the main hearing body because of the kind of minor aspect of the project. The most important part about it is that it's this National Register district and we're wrestling with these standards.
Are you needing a motion?
No, that's fine. This is billed as a study session.
And the CEQA, is there any motion necessary on the CEQA findings?
Again, I think because we're not ready to make a CEQA determination on staff without the additional documentation. I mean, I've heard, I appreciate your considering this no impact. I mean, we would like it to be no impact, and so to do the research to make that determination, I think will be, something we would bring to you and let you, concur or not with our findings at a future date. Thank you.
I also think, Board Member DeSico, you were suggesting there be some kind of elevation, or this is a question for the applicant. I think Board Member DeSico, I think you were suggesting having a drawing or a view from the cul-de-sac Green Meadow Way so we can see what that looks like. Yeah, okay, yeah. So that'd be good, I think, to present.
Sure, I mean,
also.
we were planning, obviously, typically the ARB is going to have a lot more information coming from us, whether it's photo surveys or rendering.
Good.
But certainly your point is taken.
Okay, thank you so much.
I guess, Martin, yeah, I think that would be very helpful and from what I've heard too, all the original paths will remain intact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are invading it slightly with our pavers, but the path itself stays.
Well, I'm sorry, but I do not remember what the material was and whether
paving. Right now, the path is asphalt paving.
Asphalt. Is that what's in store, or might be DG, or?
We're going to leave that entire path the way it is. The basketball court will become a half court, will remain paving. And then sort of per our layout on the site plan, we're mirroring the curve of the path with some new hardscape that surrounds the building. So we're trying to be compatible to the path's original movement, but then where it starts to touch the building, upscale the material that you'd be walking on.
Is any more? Board Member Bauer.
Comment on that. Hopefully, you would consider some kind of pervious pavement like concrete, so the water, instead of collecting the water and routing it off somewhere, we can actually get it back down. That's a big theme in the city after. I was on the Stormwater Committee, and we have a ballot issue coming up where we're trying to move the way we think about water from something to put in a storm drain towards something, towards a resource we can get back in the ground. So anything you can do to allow that water to get back down in the ground would be
totally agree.
Useful.
Totally agree.
All right. Does the staff need anything else, or like to request any other things from the board?
I appreciate all of your comments, and no, not at this time. We'll see you in the new year with some revisions. Thank you.
Sherry and Bud, thank you so much.
Thank you,
really
everybody.
Appreciate all your comments. Good, thank you. All right. Okay, that concludes this agenda item. Next on our agenda will be approval of minutes. There are none. Next is board member questions, comments, or announcements. Any, Board Member Bauer?
So I would like to ask Chair Bernstein that you agendize a topic that I will call ordinance changes that we want to recommend to the City Council. I have 4 topics on my list that I think are repetitive because we've talked about them, but I'll just list them here. I think the HRB should report directly to council. I'm not comfortable reporting to the ARB because there's no guarantee that the recommendations we make can be heard by the council without being filtered through ARB. Second, I think that we need to develop a mid-century building protection plan, just similar to what we have in Professorville. And along with that endeavor, I think we need to have hearings and encourage an ordinance change to make demolition of buildings not ministerial but discretionary, just like San Francisco. And finally, the last item that I brought up before is I think we need to have a Mills Act program that will encourage people to protect their buildings rather than destroy them. And I don't know how we move this forward. We've had the mid-century building survey on our agenda from both joint council meetings and also just as in retreats from maybe 6 years ago. And it just seems like these things can't move forward, and I don't know how to get them there, but so I think we need to get them on an agenda and try to move them forward as best we can. So.
Yeah. Amy, is it something you can discuss and how to get that to be an agenda item, just so we can just get that as a public discussion? So.
Sure. Well, recently there was a council meeting where there was discussion about penalties related to demolition, and our liaison to my left was part of a discussion there to request that there was something coming back in the new year at some point regarding how we look at our Chapter 1649 with respect to the different categories of historic resources. So and then with respect to demolition and penalties thereon. So I think, the other thing I was going to say is that we were supposed to have a meeting with the council on the 12th, but as you know, that got postponed. I don't have a new date when that might be, but hopefully in the new year, in the spring or thereafter, we can get ourselves a date. And leading up to that, I would like to target the late January meeting, perhaps, or a meeting in February to have a more full discussion and bring back. Now, in the packet for I think it was November 10th, I provided that list of things that are kind of our work program that are out there. So maybe I can resend that to all of you for consideration. And then, David, if you're interested in flagging and annotating that and sending that back to me, then we can perhaps get an agenda together that talks about moving forward.
Yes.
The list that I've just read off.
Yes.
So I could put that.
It's in the record, so I can get that from the minutes.
Okay, so I'm not sure I understand what you.
Looking forward into the new year, there's an opportunity for staff to come back with direction from council with some kind of discussion about demolitions and penalties, certainly. That brings up the ordinance itself, and ordinance changes are part of that discussion. Of course, the new year is going to bring the Eichler guidelines meetings and outreach and those discussions with council. So, and then of course we have this opportunity yearly to have a joint meeting with the council. And so to prepare for that and then have a meeting with the chair and vice chair prior to that meeting, we can, there's work we can do as a board.
So to follow up on that, our next meeting is January 12th.
I'm going to say no. The next meeting is the January 26th. We're going to do the second meeting of January. We don't have items as of yet for the 12th as far as project items, development projects. And given the holidays, getting a packet, reviewed by the management and out at Christmas time or right around the New Year's is difficult. So I'm going to say the 26th is our next meeting, if that works for all of you.
Yes, it works for me.
January 26th. Okay.
I wanted to suggest that maybe we have a meeting knowing that there are no project items on our agenda, but we just have kind of just a group study session just to casually talk about all these items. Because I think that there are a lot of these items that come up that in this formal setting we can't really talk as openly and have a thorough discussion of a lot of these things. So maybe it's kind of a retreat situation.
Okay.
And I think January is actually a great time to do that because it's a new year, and I know that we've gotten a lot of feedback, for instance, from the council and things on some directions that they want to see us going in that we just never have a chance to cohesively get together and discuss. So I think it would be wise of us maybe even before the 26th to schedule a meeting if people...
We could have a meeting on the 12th as a retreat.
Yeah.
It wouldn't require staff to prepare a packet if we just want to have an agenda.
And we meet in the other room like we've done before, and we have sort of a loose things on our agenda, but maybe we could even come with our own ideas, because it just seems like after the year we have these kind of brainstorms, but we never really, they don't go anywhere because we don't have an opportunity to really kind of discuss it. So I think might be a great thing for our board to sit down and maybe every January and just sort of plan out our year, or come up with a list of things that we really want to sort of accomplish that year. I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember when the last retreat was. I remember the retreat when we talked about the bylaws. It was in the community room over here.
Yeah. I think it's all, for me, I felt like those meetings, and even Karen had one with us a year or two ago, I think those are really great because it just makes us kind of gel as a committee. Because I always feel, and I'm speaking personally, I feel like sometimes our meetings are so few and far between that we sort of lose momentum. And I forget, what were those things we were working on? Because everyone is busy and has their own professional lives, but I think the more times we get together as a group in a more casual setting where we can talk about things, I think it's really good for us as a whole.
Yeah, I would be amenable to doing that on January 12th. Councilmember Holman, you had your light on?
Yeah, it wasn't for this, but since you brought it up, I appreciate the comments, and there was supposed to be this last year, but then Matt departed, but there was supposed to be follow-up to last year's retreat, and there were several items that I don't think actually really required that much staff input. It was more, as Vice Chair Wimmer was talking about, conversation that the HRB would be having. I actually was wanting to make a couple of other comments, though. The Squire House tour, I think you all know about this, but just to be sure, the Squire House tour is this afternoon from 4 to 6. You do have to get your name on a list, so email squirehousepaloalto@gmail.com. squirehousepaloalto@gmail.com. It's this afternoon from 4 to 6. Also, it's looking very likely, it's not a given yet, but it's looking very likely that the CPF conference will be here in 2018. It's a conversation I started last year, and they booked quite a bit ahead, so it's looking promising, though. The CPF conference will be here in 2018, first time since 1988, which was the year that an impetus for the founding of Palo Alto Stanford Heritage. There'll be lots of volunteer opportunities, so stay tuned for that. And then typically I wouldn't do this, but given the conversation today and the item that was before the board today, I found last night a book called Mid-Century Modern Architecture Travel Guide that sells for $35, and I'm going to order one. Another friend wants one. It's some of the quotes about it, like it's a must-have guide to one of the most fertile regions of the development of mid-century modern architecture. It's a handbook, the first ever to focus on the architectural wonders of the west coast of the U.S., providing visitors with an expertly curated list of 250 must-see destinations. So I'm going to order it from my favorite local bookstore, Bell's. If any of you want a copy of it, let me know and we can order how many of it at the same time. But again, I wouldn't typically do that, but given the topic on today's agenda. So thank you.
Also, so I'll be attending, I'll be attending the Squire House tour today from 4 to 6. I've already RSVP'd. I got a response on that back. Okay. Yeah.
I'm kind of interested in...
We need your mic on.
Yeah, I thought I turned it on and off. I'm glad you brought that up because I had looked in the weekly and such, and it certainly hasn't been advertised, though I had heard from Beth. And I think it was pushed forward, frankly, by Matthew because of the Interior Mills Act that has to be done once a year.
Yes, I
Very
went
low
out with
profile,
Matthew
though.
and code enforcement staff to talk
Right.
with the owner about the need for a tour,
Right.
annual tour. So,
It's been kept hidden very well, though, because I looked to see if there was any ad as to when it might take place, and
yeah, so it was published in the newspaper. The other thing is they are looking to terminate that contract. So to be aware of that when you do go today and enjoy it. So it's a process.
So quick follow-up to that, to give credit where it's due, but in addition to staff, Gail Woolley was very active in trying to get this tour to happen, because it hasn't happened. And just, I don't know how it could happen, but if this owner does terminate the Mills Act contract, because I know it's a particular interest of yours, Board Member Bauer, if they do terminate this contract, it would be nice to, rather than have that savings just go back into, as a council member, I have to be careful saying this, but have it just go back into some other fund or pool of funds. It'd be nice to be able to try to apply those savings to some other properties who might take advantage of a Mills Act. So just a thought. I don't know if it would work or not, but just a thought.
Right. When we have a discussion about demolition, what I would want to include during that discussion would be a definition of demolition. We talk about just because that'd be really useful for property developers, just to know, okay, what's triggered demolition and what doesn't. That'd be, I think, useful for people. Good. Right. Anything else for today before we adjourn?
I just want to say...
Oh, we need your mic. We need your mic on.
Wonderful document about Eichler that we had. It was amazing, all the information and what they did to prepare for this National Register nomination. It's pretty amazing, and so well written, and really depicted how Joe did business. It was very educational for me, and really enlightening.
And that was at the initiation of the neighborhood. And maybe Amy remembers, I'm embarrassed to say I can't remember the name of the architect who then lived in Green Meadow, who was, his name is just right here and not here, who was very, very involved in preparing this and advancing it with great, I'm sorry? No, at any rate, it was the initiation of the neighborhood and full support of the neighborhood, so it was a great document.
Amy, I think I had got an email from Robin saying there was a potluck after this meeting today.
Yes, that was going to be my announcement to close
yeah.
this. We have, and Robin's out on medical, but Alicia has gotten us some treats for our holiday send-off.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
So in the back.
Yeah. Vice Member, you had a comment? Yeah.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention, I think next Thursday, which is the 15th at 7 o'clock, I think there's a Palo Alto board recognition event. To remind you that, I think it's at the Art Center. Yes. Have you gotten an email on that?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
We did.
Yeah, I like these reminders. I need
Yeah.
them.
Well, maybe I can rouse that up and send that out to all of you. Also, the day before, the fire station, the Fire Station 3 that came to you a month or so ago, they are having an open house at the Art Center the night before that, the 14th. So inviting the neighborhood to come, because we're not hearing from anyone in the neighborhood about that project, and let's see what they think of, metal siding. I don't know. Okay, so.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.